until the very end, when the sun is no longer needed because the Lamb provides the light for the New Jerusalem, as we heard this morning in our call to worship. And it's interesting as we look at the similarities between the beginning of creation and this passage from Isaiah. Isaiah writes in verse 2, "For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the peoples." The story of creation tells us about God dividing the light and the darkness, and naming the light day and the darkness night. Throughout the Bible, those two contrasting elements are used to define the relationship between mankind and God. Remember when you were a small child and there were things in the dark that caused you to be afraid? Recall those stormy nights when the wind blew and the house made strange noises, and suddenly in the darkened corner of your room, you knew that there was something there that was very frightful. You even saw it move. You were held captive by the horrible thought of what it might be. You did not want to look, but you had to, and your imagination ran wild. You were too afraid to get out of bed, so you cried out in the night for Mom and Dad. They quickly came, turned on the light. What only seconds before was something frightening turned out to be your clothes piled on the back of a chair near the window. In many ways, this is how we as children of God cry out when we feel overwhelmed by the darkness that surrounds us. When people wander far from God, the Bible says they walk in darkness and they hide their deeds in darkness. The passage in Isaiah reminds us that our natural self, that fallen element that resides inside of us, pulls us into spiritual blindness, wandering in the dark of night. But Paul, writing in Colossians chapter 1, verses 13 and 14, says that God has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. Our opening song this morning begins with a plea for Jesus to come to set us free. No longer are his people to be held captive in the domain of darkness. As we celebrate the next 3 Sundays of Advent, we will see how God responds to this cry for help by bringing hope, joy, and peace. I used to work for a company that packaged cardiovascular film for hospitals. This film was used to take angiograms for people who were suffering from heart disease. Because of the sensitive nature of the film, all packaging work had to be done in total darkness. No red lights, no safe lights, pitch black. Even the smallest amount of light would ruin the film. My film rollers had to work in a pitch black environment for hours on end. It was like volunteering to be blind in order to perform your job. And Debbie kind of picked up on it a little bit this morning. Jokingly, the guys, when they would head into their dark rooms and get ready to start work, would say, "Time to turn on the dark." Now, the Bible uses this context of darkness to point to misery, adversity, and ignorance. Jeremiah in chapter 2 points to the Israelites' rejection of God. And God asks the nation, "Have I been a wilderness to Israel, or a land of thick darkness?" I think that's kind of what I feel sometimes when I'm in a cave. It's just like it just covers you, pushes down on you. I think a lot of people could say that about reading the newspaper or hearing the news. They feel like they're in this thick darkness and there's just no way to get out of it. Paul writes to the Romans in chapter 1 about people who knew God, but did not honor him as God or give thanks. They became futile in their speculations about what God was like, to the point that their foolish hearts were darkened. We see several times in the Bible the use of the analogy of blindness as a way to describe people who have walked in spiritual darkness so long that they can no longer see the truth. Their lives have become like living in a deep, dark cave. The exciting part of our passage from Isaiah this morning is the end of verse 1 and verse 3.